Minecraft version 1.9 is perhaps the most hated update in Minecraft history. No other update has split the player base quite like this one. But what makes 1.9 so unique? 1.9 was Minecraft's infamous combat update. It completely changed the combat system players were used to since the game's inception. Players in any gaming community are typically very close-minded to major change. Even though it's been years since this update, players still show their distaste for it. It's been 7 years and players are still not open to getting adjusted to this new style of combat, and even major servers like Hypixel still run their server on 1.8, which is nearly a decade old by now. And even some PvP servers that do run the latest version of Minecraft have special modifications to mimic the old style of combat. The community is still very split to this day over this change, and it's been so long since this update that some players will never even give the newer versions of Minecraft a chance. So now, let's go over the features, changes, and context to explain why 1.9 has been hated so much. Before we even get into any actual changes that Minecraft 1.9 made, it's important to understand the context of the time surrounding the update. The update came out on February 29th, 2016, and before this, the last major update came out on September 14th, 2014. This was the longest time in Minecraft's history between major updates, so you could say expectations were high. Players were not optimistic though, because between these updates, Mojang was acquired by Microsoft, and without Notch, who had been with Minecraft since the very beginning, it was feared that Minecraft would go in a bad direction. On April 1st, 2015, it was confirmed that Minecraft 1.9 was coming and it was going to be some sort of combat update. An update to combat was not necessarily something the player base was against initially. In fact, many players wanted a change to the combat system, claiming that it was just spam clicking and took no skill. Only a few days after the official announcement to the update was made, Dinnerbone would go on Reddit to ask players what people wanted to see from a combat update. Dinnerbone acknowledged that players are very split on whether or not spam clicking should have remained. The update was already dividing players, which prompted him to gather more feedback in this post. One major thing people claimed they wanted was more diversity in weapons and armor. PvP just got boring because fights always consisted of two people wearing full diamond armor with diamond swords clicking as fast as they could. Minecraft PvP was very basic. Mojang likely didn't consider player vs player combat that much when creating the combat mechanics originally because it was a much smaller game and it was more so meant to be a survival game. In 2015 though, you had giant PvP and minigame servers that utilized PvP to the fullest extent. It was such an integral part of the game in a way Mojang could have never seen coming. It was clear changing it in any way was going to upset players, but they still felt like it needed to be done. Snapshots for the update were released later in the year and first impressions were mixed. A large portion of the player base were saying that PvP was way too slow and boring. Not only was there a cooldown that drastically slowed down the speed a player could hit their opponent for maximum damage output, but the addition of shields allowed players to block the amount of damage they took by 2/3 when raised, which only dragged out these slow-paced PvP matches even further. One of the developers assured players that combat mechanics were not final yet, but little did players know at this time this was in fact going to be the final form of combat. There were of course minor changes between snapshots, but the slow-paced shield-heavy PvP meta was what players were going to have to deal with in this new era of PvP. The speed of combat also made comboing and projectile trick strategies irrelevant. Despite this, some players defended the changes, saying that PvP took more skill now because quote-unquote spam clicking was no longer a viable strategy. Prominent PvPers would not agree though.
I do want to make fun of the people defending it though by saying it adds strategy to the game. Like, strategy? You click on people to hit them with your Lego sword. Quit pretending this is chess. And don't even get me started on the amount of people yelling spam clicker whenever you disagree with the 1.9 combat change. Like, seriously, calling someone a spam clicker is like the easiest way to announce to everyone in earshot, hey guys, I had no idea how to PvP before, and I like this update because now no one else knows either.
This wasn't the only thing players had a distaste for in this update, however. Remember when I talked about how players wanted more weapon diversity? Well, Mojang sort of delivered on this. They didn't add any new weapons, but they did implement different hit speeds for already existing tools. Axes would take twice as long as swords to recharge, but do significantly more damage, giving players another viable option for the potential best weapon in combat. Axes also had the special ability to disable shields temporarily, which was a huge benefit. The meta determined that axes were an overall better weapon than swords, mostly thanks to shields, to the point where swords were almost useless in player vs player combat. The extra attack speed from a sword didn't mean anything if the opponent could effortlessly block it with the shield. Shields definitely seem to be the biggest cause of backlash in this update, because although some players were calling for hit speed cooldowns, nobody wanted a defense-heavy PvP meta. The backlash didn't stop here, however. Another controversial addition to the game was tipped arrows. Tipped arrows didn't necessarily make the game worse, but many players believe they were poorly implemented. This item was used by the player to fire at an opponent dealing damage, as well as giving them a potion effect. Some of the new arrows like damage, slowness, and weakness ones were generally accepted as a cool alternative to the standard arrow, but some of these did not make sense. What good was giving your opponent something like a jump boost, water breathing, or fire resistance? And perhaps the most pointless item ever added in Minecraft history, the Arrow of Healing. Primarily because it just doesn't heal. All arrows deal damage on impact, and the Arrow of Healing didn't even heal as much damage as the arrow dealt. So whether you wanted to heal or harm your target, this arrow was just awful. Now technically this arrow can be used to deal extra damage to certain mobs, because some mobs actually take extra damage from healing effects. But remember, to get these arrows you had to brew the potion, convert that potion to a splash potion, go to the end dimension to collect the dragon's breath from the dragon's fight, then use that to convert your splash potion into a lingering potion, then finally craft with some arrows to get 8 measly tipped arrows. There was no reason to go through all this effort to deal slightly more damage per bow shot to some mobs, when it's much simpler to just enchant your bow to one-shot mobs. There's so many more smaller gripes many players have, so I'll try to go over them quickly. One major disappointment was due to the removal of the Super Golden Apple crafting recipe. The Super Golden Apple was arguably the most powerful item in Minecraft, but it took over a stack of gold to craft, so it had seemed balanced. Players liked the item, so it was upsetting that it would be much harder to obtain now. With how easy it is to get gold in modern versions, this actually seemed like the right change in the long term. Blaze powder would also be required to use while brewing potions in brewing stands now, which to many players just added an unnecessary inconvenience. Chorus fruit to most players was either extremely useless or extremely overpowered. The fact that chorus fruit could be used to teleport through walls made some factions players quite upset. You could also no longer use items while boating. The skeleton AI was buffed, making them far more annoying, and beats were added for seemingly no reason. And it seemed unfitting that Mojang decided to put the beet seeds in the end cities. It kind of made sense for the time to put the new stuff all in one place, but long term it really made no sense. No new players nowadays will have any clue why this random crop was included alongside this amazing endgame loot. The big question after version 1.9 was released was how long players were going to stick to playing version 1.8. It was quite common for Minecraft servers to take a few weeks or even a month or two to upgrade their servers to the newest version of Minecraft after a new version came out. There certainly has been controversial updates and changes before 1.9, but regardless, most servers always eventually upgraded to the newest version. Upgrading to the newest version was the norm, so most players expected that they were going to have to adapt to the new system eventually. But as months went by, most major servers, including the biggest ones, continued to operate on version 1.8. This update had by far caused more backlash in the Minecraft community than any other update before, making servers fear that if they did upgrade, they may lose a substantial percentage of their player base. Soon enough, these servers did allow players using Minecraft version 1.9 to play on their servers, assuring both 1.8 and 1.9 players could join the server. But 1.8 would still be the official server version. So even if you join in 1.9, you wouldn't get to see any of the new features, and you would still need to PvP as if you were on version 1.8. To many players' surprise, it seemed that they may not need to adapt to a new system after all. This belief was solidified by many players on June 8, 2016 when something shocking would happen. Minecraft version 1.10 was released. Another major edition of Minecraft was officially out, and most servers had still not upgraded to 1.9, despite it being released 3 months prior. Having the majority of servers be 2 major versions behind the newest version was something unprecedented in Minecraft. The community split was ingrained. Most Minecraft servers were going to remain operating on version 1.8 indefinitely, at least until combat was revamped to please the majority of players. But if Mojang didn't do something about combat soon, then it would be highly unlikely that some players would ever give the newer versions of Minecraft a chance, even if they did change combat. Unfortunately, Mojang did not change core combat mechanics at all in future updates. 1.11, 1.12, 1.13, and 1.14 would all be released with very little if any changes to core combat mechanics. Mojang would not address the players' cries for a reversion to combat changes or even attempt to find a middle ground. One seemingly fair compromise that was popularly suggested was adding an endgame rule option to toggle hit speeds and cooldowns. This way it could be the player's choice, and finally players who had remained on version 1.8 for so many years could enjoy all the new features from 6 major updates while also being able to enjoy fast-paced combat. Mojang was stubborn though, and couldn't even give players so much as a simple command option. A lot of players had given up hope. accepting that Minecraft's player base would be split permanently and that Mojang was not going to even attempt to address the problems of combat. But out of nowhere, on February 8th, 2019, Jeb would tweet out a vague statement simply reading "combat mechanics," followed by a tweet expressing his concerns about Minecraft's combat system being inconsistent across different platforms. A few months later, he would post to the official Minecraft subreddit announcing a new custom snapshot that he had been working on to test new combat mechanics. He states at the top of this post, "The combat mechanics in Java Edition have been a controversial topic ever since the 1.9 update. We want the mechanics to be the same across all editions, but simply porting Java to Bedrock or vice versa is not taking us forward. We want to find a system that is flexible and works well across all input devices." For further context, the Bedrock edition of Minecraft, which is the edition played on consoles and mobile devices, never implemented the PC version of combat. Fast clicking was still the best combat technique in that version of the game. Bedrock and Java editions are different in a lot of ways, but Mojang has made strides to make both of these versions more similar to each other and ensure a consistent experience regardless of what platform you're on. It's fairly obvious why Mojang didn't want to just take the Java combat mechanics and implement them on Bedrock, but reverting to the old system and the problems that came with that was still not an option for them. This new system was meant to address the problems of both systems. Jeb stated the main issues with 1.9 combat were that it was too slow and too hard to understand for new players, while saying the main problem with the old system was that there was too many inputs required to PvP, which made it difficult to play on controllers, as well as a lack of diversity in armor and weapons. So the following changes to combat were meant to address the issues of both versions. They increased the speed you could attack, allowed you to hold down your attack button so you didn't have to spam click, and added a new reach statistic to give more diversity in weapons. These changes were only a few of many in this snapshot, and although it wasn't fully satisfactory for a lot of players, most people were just happy that Mojang was finally giving combat mechanics some attention. Most if not all of these changes seem to be going in the right direction though to make things better for casual and competitive PvPers. Even if it wasn't perfect, the new changes would at least make the combat system better than it was before. Unfortunately, it was too late to convince the majority of 1.8 players at this point to ever switch to a new version of PvP. The player base for this old version was hardcore now, but a new, more appealing combat system could at least influence some servers to update and attract new players, causing the 1.8 player base to phase out over time. Jeb, over the course of more than a year, would continue to release more snapshots tweaking the combat mechanics based on testing and community feedback. Within this time, both 1.15 and 1.16 were released. None of the new combat changes were brought to either of these versions, but continued to see the light in periodic snapshots, until August 21st, 2020, when Jeb would release the final new combat snapshot. Minecraft was in a desperate need of an overhaul, and with the new combat snapshot stopping shortly after 1.16 was released, players expected some official combat changes in a major version of Minecraft very soon. However, even with Minecraft versions 1.17 and 1.18 being released later in 2021, no changes were made to the combat mechanics again, nor were there any more combat snapshots. Players were confused. What happened to all the changes that Jeb had been working on for over a year? Combat was not in any less of a desperate need of an overhaul. Even in 2021, 5 years after the combat update was released, the biggest servers were still running 1.8, and Hypixel even released a chart showing more than 2/3 of their players were joining with the 1.8 client. Funny enough, Hypixel actually finally discontinued support for 1.9 and 1.10 clients by 2021. There's not really much else to say about Minecraft combat. Even with versions 1.19, 1.20, and 1.21 coming out, we have not seen any major changes, and Jeb has been very silent as to what happened to his project that is 4 years old now, suggesting Mojang has given up on their plans on implementing combat changes in modern versions of Minecraft. Even with the combat update being nearly 8 years old as of this video and 12 major versions being released since then, the infamous legacy of Minecraft 1.9 remains strong today. No update in Minecraft history has ever come close to dividing the player base like 1.9 has, despite the barrels of new content the 13 versions of Minecraft have to offer. There is a strong number of players who continue to play a nearly decade-old version of Minecraft. These players have simply been left behind by Mojang. Even going into 2024, the community split when it comes to the combat is vast, and many major servers still continue to run this outdated version to this very day. 1.9 is almost undoubtedly the worst version of Minecraft ever released. It's a shame that Mojang never really attempted to fix the damage it caused, but at least with the ability to play any version of Minecraft you want today, players can make their choice. Players claim today that over time 1.8 combat will eventually die. This is because new players are going to play the newest version of Minecraft without knowing any better. If you were new to Minecraft, why would you go through the extra effort of downloading and playing a decade-old version of the game? But remember, a percentage of those players will end up joining a 1.8 PvP server, which will draw them into that style of combat, so I don't believe 1.8 combat is going anywhere anytime soon. As for the future, I still hope Mojang will implement combat changes to increase the pace of fights and allow for more strategies. Players are still clamoring for a new combat update to this very day, but if they haven't done it by now, it seems hopeless that it will ever come. What do you think about the combat? Let me know in the comments what combat mechanic changes you would like to see and whether you prefer 1.8 or modern PvP. If you like this video, please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until the next one, peace out.